gentlemen out there in the darkness. What a turnout, what a surprise to see such a packed house, and what a delight it is to see so many people coming out this evening. This show sold out within minutes and could have sold out twice or 3 times from what I'm told. So there's going to be another showing of the film on the 11th of October, so do tell all your friends and people that you know that couldn't make it tonight that there is going to be another showing, so that's great. It's really great to see so many people here. It's obviously such an important subject for so many people. And I just want to say a few thank yous before we go into a few other bits. Firstly, to my colleagues at Frome Town Council for helping to organise this in terms of the logistics and the organisation. Also to the Merlin Theater for having us here to host this, and to Julian and Charlotte for actually giving me the idea in the first place to see if we could get this organised. A couple of other things that you might be interested in, one in particular is that our own Loop Composting, who I'm sure some of you will have heard of, who go around and collect all the food waste from the Frome cafes and restaurants and make their own very nutrient-rich compost, are having their open day and sale very soon. And I knew I was going to forget what date it was, but Rachel, I'm sure you'll shout that out for me.
It's the 20th of October.
On the 20th of October. This compost is like gold dust. You need a really tiny bit of it mixed into your soil. So if you're interested in that, that's one to remember.
Where is it?
It's going to be at
Victoria Park.
Victoria Park. Thank you, Rachel. The running order for this evening is that we're going to be introduced very shortly to Charly Le Marchant, who is a local filmmaker, and she's going to tell us a bit about herself and her film, and we're going to be watching that. Then there is going to be a short interval for you to go and replenish your drinks at the bar. We're going to then go straight into watching Wilding, film about the Knepp Estate. And then we're going to have a question and answer session with a panel here. And we've got 4 local arborists and landscapers and wildlife people who are going to be talking on that. So that's going to be very interesting. I think what's really interesting is that people often misunderstand wilding and rewilding and think that it's just about letting our gardens and open spaces and farms and landscapes be reclaimed by nature. But it is about so much more than that. It's about thinking about the soil that we're depleting, the species that are dying off around us, and the importance of all these things to our own survival as a species. So these are really important subjects, and these are 2 really important films coming up. So it really is great that there are so many interested people. And we're lucky in Frome to have a lot of really forward-thinking and progressive people who are working in the field, educating and informing and doing really good things in the area. So we're really lucky to have the panel that we're going to have later on. And on that note, I'm going to introduce Charly Le Marchant, who's going to come on stage now and give you a brief introduction about herself and her film. And I'll see you again later. Thanks again for coming. Oh, last thing, boring thing. Please turn your phones off if you can, or to silent if you really need to have them on vibrate. Thank you. Charly.
So this film you're about to see was film number 10 of our series Wood for the Trees that started in 2019. Tom Barnes, who's in the audience somewhere, and I, so I've got a background in, as well as filmmaking, I've got a background in planting trees, and Tom has a background in, as a sawmiller, and we got put together by Jenny MacDonald, who unfortunately isn't here yet, to see if we could come up with something, and we came up with this series Wood for the Trees, and so 2019 it was coming up to the general election, and there was a lot of talk about planting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of trees, and everyone was vying for which party was going to plant the most trees. And we were kind of like, well, what trees are you going to plant, and where are you going to plant them, and how is this going to be done? And that's how the series was started. So we went around the country, partially hindered by COVID happening quite early on in the series, which kept us a lot closer to home. And we started asking people questions about different topics around tree planting. So we've done things on agroforestry, we've talked to people who are breeding trees for the timber industry, And then to kind of take it back to what I personally think is like where it all started is looking at rewilding and natural regeneration. And so we were really lucky to manage to get in touch with Alistair Driver, who's the head of Rewilding Britain, and he really fortunately for us was really up for meeting us and arranged to meet us at Knepp. So as a filmmaker, what I was trying to look at is what are the things that people get wrong about rewilding, and what are the things that, and especially when asking people, it's like what is it you're really passionate about, what is it you really want people to know. So that's kind of where we came from in terms of asking the questions. But we also, if you watch our series, you'll see there's a lot of themes that go through the series, such as things like squirrel damage and pests and diseases coming into the country. So all of those get woven through the whole series. I don't know what else to say other than to watch the film. Thank you.
And we'll start over here with Julian.
Hi, good evening. My name's Julian Hight. I've lived in Frome for 30 years, and for want of a better word, I'm a heritage tree specialist. I photograph them, measure them. I've measured about 600 and plant them in and around Frome. So not exactly rewilding, but it's the same, it's the same sort of end game, hopefully.
And he won't say this himself, but his books are for sale in the foyer. Jan.
Hello everybody, I'm Jan Stannard, and I founded a charity completely inspired by what Charly and Izzy had done at Knepp, called Cllr Rewilding, and our first rewilding site is just outside Frome.
Charlie? Or either one. There you go.
I introduced myself earlier, but so I do many things, but filmmaking is my main thing I do at the moment. But I'm also a forest school teacher, and my mum worked in conservation, so rewilding's been like the answer to a question that I asked myself of like, why are there these different types of kind of habitat if we have to do all this work to kind of keep them there.
Thank you. Hopefully there'll be some questions that you can expand upon that in a little while. We don't have any particular questions organised, but we do have one because we knew it was a subject that was going to come up, and I kind of wanted to get it out of the way and park it and to give Charlie a chance to answer. And the question comes from Catherine up in the corner. That corner? I knew it was a corner.
Hi. Just to say, first of all, that I really admire what you've done. It's inspirational as well as utterly heartbreaking. But one of the questions obviously has come up is that up until very recently, I understand that the Knepp Estate allowed trail hunting, and just trying to understand how that set with the ethos of rewilding, please.
So that's about trail hunting and the ethos of Knepp.
It's a complex one, isn't it? Because we've had, our family has been involved with hunting for 150 years, and the reason that my grandmother supported the estate, because they're always quite loss-making, these things, was because of the hunting. So there's a sort of history there, family history. I suppose we have never allowed any illegal hunting on Knepp since the ban. Trail hunting, the Callin Horsham hunt, had a few ups and downs. In the last 4 years, they've moved to a different system. A new group of people took over the hunt, and they're going through a process of moving from trail hunting to drag hunting. So that's where we are at the moment. At the moment, we're waiting. We're not welcoming them back until they have changed to a drag hunt, and that's going. That was a decision back in the beginning of the summer. So it's sort of going through a transition period. Whether they decide to do that or not, I don't know, but that's where we are.
So that's the condition that they'll be allowed back on the land?
Not all of it, because actually it's become quite complex. The scrubland in the south it's a bit more tricky because you can get young hounds or whatever going off trail and pushing cattle, for instance, along footpaths. So then it becomes a sort of health and safety issue rather than anything else. So they won't be coming back into the dense scrubland, but in more open areas they'll be welcomed back as a drag hunt.
Thank you. And now I'm going to open the floor to questions. So please, any questions for any of the panel? Please, someone put their hand up. Oh, yeah, a lady on the far left, my left, on the end.
Okay. Wonderful film, very inspiring. I would like to ask really what the future would be for introducing predators into your ecosystem, the ones that are missing. And obviously it's a very difficult issue, but do you see a future? Is there a way forward for this?
About 2008, there was an article published in Nature, and it gave this lovely rule of nature, which was 10,000 kilograms of prey and 90 kilograms of predator. And that works for a polar bear or a stoat. That's the relationship with a healthy population of both predator and prey. So I worked out in my calculator that I could have 10.5 lynx with the amount of prey that I had. Then rather than just being a naive idiot, I then looked up what a lynx was and what it did, and then realised that actually the smallest territory for a male lynx is about 28 square kilometres, and a female about 14.5 square kilometres. So then you got to the point when we could have half a lynx. So I think these questions are about us and our society and how we allow these animals back into our country rather than to individual sites. So it's about, I guess the Eurasian lynx will be something that may be possible because you've got these huge forest systems. They're a stealth predator in forest systems. Their main prey is a roe deer. You don't have many sheep in forest systems in this country. You do in other places in Europe, in Norway, for instance, and Sweden. So it's probably the first big predator, I would have thought, that will be allowed back in our lives. I think the other ones, the wolf and the bear, are a long way away.
Thank you. Can I ask Jan, what was it about learning about Knepp that inspired you to set up Heels?
When I went to Knepp for, I think, the first time, possibly the second time, which was it 2018 that Wilding came out? That year or the year after, and came out early in the morning and heard a turtle dove purring for the first time. I just had tears streaming down my face because at the time I was in my early 60s and I'd never heard a turtle dove, plus the nightingales. It was just, if you've loved nature all your life, to go somewhere where it's actually coming back, where everywhere else is declining, was just the most life-changing moment for me. So after working for 40 years, I just had to try and do something like Charly and Izzy had done at Knepp, and the idea of setting up a charity where all of us together could work on that idea was the culmination of that journey. But it was just being in all that life.
Thank you. And Julian, I know you've worked closely with Ted, who's in that film, who appears just exactly as you've described him to me in the past. Tell me about the
brilliant. Great
importance
to
of
see
trees.
him. Brought a tear to my eyes. I've got something in my eye at that point, actually. Yeah, Ted's fantastic. He's, I did want to say, really, I moved to Frome 30 years ago, and I went into the Oxfam shop and I bought a book called Selwood Forest, The Bounds of Selwood Forest. And it fascinated me that there was this mythical forest in our midst. What it's all about. What exactly? Where is this ancient Selwood Forest? And I'm not going to do a monologue here, but I'm bringing it round to now. That I feel it's partly luck. It's just the way that maybe the planets have aligned. But we've got this band between us and Stour Head. That sort of area was our ancient Selwood forest, and it wasn't this big dense forest as the film describes. You know, it was a patchwork mosaic, and then luckily Cllr Rewilding come along, inspired massively by Knepp, obviously, who pioneered this whole thing. I just think it's fantastic. And we've got this band of land to the south of Frome, which is where this big rewilding project is happening. You know, I just think it's so important. And we're very lucky to have it here. It's almost chance, isn't it? You were saying earlier, Jen, that looked around the south of England and this land popped up. And there are also some other landowners in that area doing a similar thing. So, I mean, in 2018, I met Izzy here because there was a tree conference. And she talked about Knepp then. And that seems quite a long time ago now, but now it's come full circle. I mean, I just thought the film was magnificent, and I've had this culmination, that this is happening in our landscape here. It's almost like that reviving that ancient Selwood forest. It's happening. You know, we can see from what Charly and Izzy have done at Knepp that, you know, it's possible. Just brilliant. So blown away. I've still got something in my eye from watching that film. And I forgot what you asked me, but I just wanted to get that.
Just reading about your experience of the you know, replenishing, really, what you're doing is replenishing our ancient forests, because you take the acorns and you grow the trees and you gorilla plant them.
I mean, rewilding's it's not exactly leave it and see what happens. There's always human intervention, isn't there? But we've always been a part of that, haven't we? So since we were cut off from Europe 7,000 years ago or so, and that was the wild wood that we had. You know, the trees came across from Europe, followed by the grazing animals, followed by us. So we've always been there as part of it. And I know there's a lot more people now, and things are a bit different. But I think a helping hand you have to do sometimes, and I just think it's the most natural thing in the world to pick up an acorn, this little nut, and pop it in the ground and watch a little tree come up, which could turn into these giant trees that we have got in the area, you know, living links to our history, really, you know. So I think people have always done that, you know. I think the earliest recorded big landscape planting was by Queen Elizabeth I, so 500 years ago. Before that, there aren't any records of big planting, but I think people have always done that, you know, maybe. So I don't think a helping hand is wrong in a way, you know. Perhaps you want to do.
Before I come around to Charlie, any questions from the audience at this point? For any of the panel?
We've got a question here.
Oh, yes, thank you. Hello. I get quite overwhelmed, really, with how to get involved, because obviously, if you've got land, lots of land, then that's great, you can rewild it. And you can not use pesticides at home and all that kind of thing with an organic life. But actually, to really help, what would you recommend in terms of getting involved in the movement, or if you've got access to, say, 2 acres or something, where you can't have herds roaming, but you want to make a difference? What ways are there to get involved? Or what do you recommend?
Charlie?
Yeah, Charlie.
I'm happy. Rather than us, I'm not going to spend much time saying what we've think like a herbivore, think like, you know, all of those things are absolutely relevant to your question. So thinking differently about what you're going to do to land. But how I'm going to answer this question is, I was up at Manchester last week, and I was at the Manchester Museum giving a talk because they've got an exhibition on it which includes Knepp in their museum. And my talk started with a video of some Vicent bison walking through shallows just outside of Rotterdam. And these bison took 30 miles away from one of the biggest cities in Europe, next door to a river system which has more traffic than nearly any other river system in the world. And the yachts and the speedboats and the boats going up and down the big river system weren't stopping and bothering to look at this extraordinary sight, which is this herd of bison wandering through the shadows. Anyway, tongue-in-cheek, I'd looked at a map of Manchester, and there's a park called Clifton Park, which has a big river system running through it in the sort of north-west corner of Manchester. So I was saying to the audience, isn't it incredible? You've got bison back. Have you all been to see it? And they're all going, what? Bison in Manchester? No. And obviously it was my idiotic joke, but my serious point there is that we absolutely have not learnt a thing from Europe. We have not learnt a single bloody thing. If you go to Europe, you can see bison next door to towns and cities in parks with people wandering around, held back by 3 or 4 strand electric fence from areas they don't want them to be in, wandering through, as I said, shallows in river systems. And yet in this country, when you want to have a bison in a natural setting, you have to build a double fence, one of them being 6'6" high. You have to have 7,000 volts of electricity running through it. You have to have, if there's a footpath going near this fence, and the people on the footpath might see a bison, that's very scary for them. So you actually have to put up a physical structure so you can't see the bison. I mean, that is where we are in this country. That is where we are. So one of the things collectively we can do is just get rid of the idiocy. Get rid of, you know.
Thanks, Charlie. Charlie, why don't you tell us, I mean, I know your focus is on trees in particular, but what was it that you wanted the mic? What was it that first inspired you to kind of take on the idea of rewilding through trees?
Rewilding, yeah. Yes. I'll try and make a long story short. So before I moved to Frome, I was living in a yurt on the edge of a bit of moorland, and actually going back to visit it now, it looks quite similar to Knepp, slightly different species. And as I kind of mentioned before, so that was managed by my mum, and I'd seen the various things that had been done, cutting back the gorse, clearing the bracken at certain times of the year, but also horses coming onto the land, cattle at certain times of certain years, and what it created. So for me, that was obvious that was a thing that could happen. And then coming here in 2018 and seeing Izzy speak, it kind of, and you know, I had heard about rewilding. I thought, oh yeah, I know what that is. I know all about that. But seeing her speak about the animals, the penny dropped of like, oh, that's why we're having to do the job of the animals, or conservationists are. So I just really, I really wanted to kind of capture my penny dropping and getting that out to people. And also knowing, like having spent time in like the North York moors where there's no trees at all, and knowing that you have to plant trees in those areas because it would be 100 years before you get trees back. So I suppose I had all these questions that I knew the answer to, but I would really like to kind of get that information out there. That was kind of what inspired me, and I wanted to go to Knepp.
I mean, how important is communication, communicating your ideas, Jen? Thinking a bit more locally, how do you find people around you react to what you're doing?
And some of this is brought up by Alistair in the film before, the Wilding film. And like anything you do in life, and certainly Knepp have experienced this, you get people who really don't like what you're doing, people in the middle, some of whom are keen, some are more neutral, and then the real enthusiasts, and that's what we've had locally here as a mixture. But people have particularly liked something we do to the question asking about how can you make a difference if you don't have much land. We have a scheme called Heal 3x3, so our charity is called Heal, and you can sponsor a 3 metre by 3 metre square of land and then get the What 3 Words address for that land so you know exactly where it is. And I'll never forget Christine, who came on a tour, because we do tours, and she had her phone out and she was sort of following it and said, my square's here. And she found her square and it had a baby oak tree, and we have thousands of baby oak trees just up the road. We're just outside Witham Friary, and we have the heavy clay like Knepp, so thousands of baby oaks. So Christine had a baby oak and a piece of hedge and sort of agricultural grass in her square, and just to hear her excitement at having this connection. So if you haven't got the resources but you have £20, then you can connect yourself to a piece of land which is really local to here. So that's one way. or just letting your garden go a bit wilder. That does make a difference to quite a lot of species, particularly small insects. Julian's point actually about the area, so from Heel in the north, so we're on the road between Upton Noble and Wisham Friary, and then the land going right down to National Trust Towerhead is almost contiguous with lots of nature-friendly landowners. So the reaction from those neighbours of ours has been wonderful, and we're looking at collaborating on quite a number of things together. And the other thing I must mention, because I may not get time after this, but wild living beavers have turned up. Many of you will know they're in the catchment, but and there was possibly some black ops at some point in the past. But a pair of canoodling beavers was caught on camera making love noises, which was very sweet. So there's a lot going on. So do come if you want to, and it's free to access anytime, day or night.
Any questions from the audience at this point? Yes. I can't actually see it. Lady in blue in the middle.
Knepp obviously didn't work as a farm financially, but now you've got to all rewilding. It's all very brilliant. Is it self-sufficient financially?
I'll just repeat that because for the audience. Is it self-sufficient financially now?
One of the most important things that nature will have to pay its way, and the whole movement of natural capital and all these ideas and these solutions that we're coming up with is all about how is it going to pay, and it's going to be a really interesting next decade. We've got a funding gap between philanthropy and government, about $1 trillion a year to spend on halting the loss of biodiversity on the planet. So how's that going to work? For us at Knepp, we got Savills to come and look at our books and compare our system now with a grade 2 arable farm and a organic farming system, and we're twice as profitable as the grade 2 arable farm, and we are nearly 3 times as profitable as an organic mixed farm. So, and that's done through tourism, that's done through the selling of meat, that's done through renting out farm buildings that used to be in the farm, that's by renting out cottages that used to have the farm manager in and the dairyman in. That's done through environmental stewardship and the disappearing single farm payment. So those 6 things are the things that have changed our loss-making farming system to a profitable and sustainable system. And we have my son has just opened up a cafe, restaurant and shop, and he's already had 100,000 visitors to come and have a cup of coffee with him personally.
Thank you. Julian, Charlie mentioned about learning lessons from Europe, and I know you've been all over Europe and indeed the world looking at trees. What do you think you've found that we can learn or that we can share, or things that you've found on your travels that we could be doing or should be doing?
Well, I think Charlie touched on it. A lot of it is their regulation, because they've still got wild boar. I went to Italy once, and we were staying on this agriturismo farm, and we got there at night. It was dark, it was misty up in the mountains in Sicily, and a whole family of boar just ran straight across in front of us. Look, if that happened here, it would be a catastrophe, wouldn't it? You know, but that's just life. They live with it. And the same with wolves. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever be able to get those back. It just seems too far-fetched for England, but I think looking at the European model is a way to go, really, I suppose, you know. And I did just want to quickly say about what can we do to rewild. I mean, I haven't got a big patch of land. I live in a small terraced house, and I've got 200 oak trees in the garden, so there's not a lot of room, but we let them. But even having those little baby oaks, I've noticed this species coming back, you know, and it's known that it's the veteran trees that really give to wildlife. That's when it gets really, the biodiversity is really strong, you know. But even little baby oaks, I've had caterpillars eating the leaves, so we're going to get some nice moths in the spring, and even saw a glowworm last summer, you know. So just doing your little bit at home in your own patch, that it all helps. It's not rewilding as such, but it all helps biodiversity, you know, which is what it's all about, really, isn't it?
Any questions from the audience? I can't actually see out. Yes, one on the left up there, Laura, thanks.
Sorry, thank you for letting me have a second question.
I'm quite grateful, thank you.
Knepp is, as you've just said, Charlie, now a financial success. We've got more examples of wilding going on near us. Have you persuaded any of your neighbours to follow your way ahead?
What's been really lovely to see over the last 5 or 6 years is not only people joining in on our boundary and pulling down the fences and putting land in the project with Knepp directly, but there's also projects that are expanding away from Knepp. But then there's another part of the movement, which is we now employ a scrubland officer. Okay, have you ever heard of a scrubland officer? Well, we've got one. We have a project called Wheel to Waves. An extraordinary project happened on the south coast around Brighton, and it's called the Sussex Bay Project. And the fishers managed to persuade everyone that they needed to push back against dredging and trawling. So we've got now an exclusion zone with no dredging and trawling 4 kilometres out to sea. And this is beginning to see the fishers there now having sustainable catches and so on, so the fishery is recovering. But we know that without work done on the terrestrial side of things, coastal waters can't recover properly and quickly. So we came up with this idea that we could start a whole programme, a large 150 mile corridor called Wheel to Waves. We live in the Weald. It's this clay description of our region. And so it's the Wheel to Waves, and where we've got hundreds and hundreds of people now, from gardeners all the way up to large estates, all joining up and thinking about collectively what we're going to do in the future to help the kelp and the Sussex Bay project. So these are all to do with, restoration, thinking where nature's going to sit within our systems. Where's farming going to sit? Where's nature going to sit? How are we going to work together? So all of that is happening now and is hugely, Natural England have given us 2 people. We employ another 4 people ourselves within a foundation that we set up a number of years ago, 2.5 years ago. So there's really is things that are moving and lots of people joining in and thinking collectively, which is so lovely. You guys are obviously the kings of all of that. Frome is it, isn't it? We all know that. But we'll try it to emulate.
Well done, Frome. Thank you, Charlie. Any more questions from the audience? There's one at the back there in the middle, yes?
Julian, we're all having we're all getting our acorns and we're all planting them up in our pots. We've got some at home too, like you.
To a profitable and sustainable system. And we have my son has just opened up a cafe, restaurant and shop, and he's already had 100,000 visitors to come and have a cup of coffee with him personally.
Thank you. Julian, Charlie mentioned about learning lessons from Europe, and I know you've been all over Europe and indeed the world looking at trees. What do you think you've found that we can learn or that we can share, or things that you've found on your travels that we could be doing or should be doing?
Well, I think Charlie touched on it. A lot of it is their regulation, because they've still got wild boar. I went to Italy once, and we were staying on this agriturismo farm, and we got there at night. It was dark, it was misty up in the mountains in Sicily, and a whole family of boar just ran straight across in front of us. Look, if that happened here, it would be catastrophe, wouldn't it? But that's just life. They live with it. And the same with wolves. I don't know if we'll ever be able to get those back. It just seems too far-fetched for England, but I think looking at the European model is a way to go, really, I suppose, And I did just want to quickly say about what can we do to rewild. I haven't got a big patch of land. I live in a small terraced house, and I've got 200 oak trees in the garden, so there's not a lot of room, but we let them. But even having those little baby oaks, I've noticed this species coming back, and it's known that it's the veteran trees that really give to wildlife. That's when it gets really, the biodiversity is really strong, but even little baby oaks, I've had caterpillars eating the leaves, so we're going to get some nice moths in the spring, and even saw a glowworm last summer, you know. So just doing your little bit at home in your own patch, that it all helps. It's not rewilding as such, but it all helps biodiversity, you know, which is what it's all about, really, isn't it?
Any questions from the audience? I can't actually see out. Yes, one on the left up there, Laura, thanks.
Sorry, thank you for letting me have a second question.
I'm quite grateful, thank you.
Knepp is, as you've just said, Charlie, now a financial success. We've got more examples of wilding going on near us. Have you persuaded any of your neighbours to follow your way ahead?
What's been really lovely to see over the last 5 or 6 years is not only people joining in on our boundary and pulling down the fences and putting land in the project with Knepp directly, but there's also projects that are expanding away from Knepp. But then there's another part of the movement, which is we now employ a scrubland officer. Okay, have you ever heard of a scrubland officer? Well, we've got one. We have a project called Wheel to Waves. An extraordinary project happened on the south coast around Brighton, and it's called the Sussex Bay Project. And the fishers managed to persuade everyone that they needed to push back against dredging and trawling. So we've got now an exclusion zone with no dredging and trawling 4 kilometres out to sea. And this is beginning to see the fishers there now having sustainable catches and so on, so the fishery is recovering. But we know that without work done on the terrestrial side of things, coastal waters can't recover properly and quickly. So we came up with this idea that we could start a whole programme, a large 150 mile corridor called Wheel to Waves. We live in the Weald. It's this clay description of our region. And so it's the Wheel to Waves, and where we've got hundreds and hundreds of people now, from gardeners all the way up to large estates, all joining up and thinking about collectively what we're going to do in the future to help the kelp and the Sussex Bay project. So these are all to do with, you know, restoration, thinking where nature's going to sit within our systems. Where's farming going to sit? Where's nature going to sit? How are we going to work together? So all of that is happening now and is hugely, I mean, Natural England have given us 2 people. We employ another 4 people ourselves within a foundation that we set up a number of years ago, 2.5 years ago. So there's really is things that are moving and lots of people joining in and thinking collectively, which is so lovely. You guys are obviously the kings of all of that. I mean, Frome is it, isn't it? I mean, we all know that. But we'll try it, anyway.
Well done, Frome. Thank you, Charlie. Any more questions from the audience? There's one at the back there in the middle, yes?
Julian,
What?
we're all having we're all getting our acorns, and we're all planting them up in our pots, but some at home too, like you. When are we going to plant them where they can grow?
Yeah, good question.
Just for the rest of the audience, that's when can we collectively plant Julian's acorns?
Yeah, because they do need a bit of space, you know. So the Ancient Tree Forum recommends 35 metres between oaks, because if you imagine the branches will come out, not in our lifetime, but, you know, maybe in our grandparents' children's lifetime, the branches extend. You know, this is the kind of space, and what we've seen in the film, that open landscape, they'd want to be in the light. So when are you going to put an oak tree? You'd be stupid to put one in your terraced house garden, wouldn't you? Like me. I couldn't help it. But I pollard it, so it works for its living. I used to do a little bit of guerrilla planting in the brambles, because that's, you know, nature's thorn is the mother of the oak. It's difficult. So I'm lucky that I work with people who have got some land, basically, because most of us can't plant an oak tree and expect it to go on. So Frome Town Council I've worked with, so we put all the green spaces around the town. We've only planted 16 oaks. You know, it's nothing. It's not going to save the world for the climate change, but they need that space, and they might be meeting places in the future, you know, and then give to biodiversity, etc. And I'm working with other landowners, but yeah, it's difficult to know where to put them. I know hedgerows are great places, but then a farmer's probably going to come along. If he doesn't know it there, it'll get cut down when he trims the hedges. It's a really difficult question, and I'm not answering it very well. Sorry. But if you can't find anywhere to plant them, then maybe send me a message. And
Drop him an email. Thank you. And I think there was one more in the audience.
Right.
Sorry.
Just to add to that, one of the really interesting things we've been seeing is Crocus robur being heavily browsed, and actually it can bifurcate and keep. You can basically goat topiary your oak. So have an oak in your garden, just keep it topiaried. In Europe, again, you see hedges made of just oak. So these things are tolerant to topiary.
Thank you. Last one already. Yes, okay. Can you speak into the microphone? Sorry, just so the audience can hear. Thank you.
Talking of wild boar, my partner was cycling on trails around the Cllr Hill area, and he saw one come across his path. So we obviously do have them around here. Is that something to do with the Cllr Rewilding? No.
No, as a well-governed charity, seriously, everything we do is done properly, and there are already wild boar in this area, and we've also seen signs of them on small amounts of signs of them on some of our land, but they were already here, and they could be covering a very big area, and I think there are reports of them in down as far as Stourhead as well, so they are in the area, but I don't think there are huge numbers of them.
But it's exciting, though, I think, isn't it?
Imagine.
It can be alarming when you're driving along the road and one runs out in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant for us, but we're going to be bringing pigs in, so that's quite an interesting thing to think about. Tamworth and boar, but we think we've got dogs, but yeah.
But, yes, come on, Charlie.
I think there was wild boar sausages found being sold in the Stourhead farm shop, so yeah, definitely.
So they're definitely around. Thank you, audience, for all your questions. I'm going to ask the panel to wrap up just very, very briefly on one thing that they would really like to see happen in the next 10 years, either through their own work or work that other people are doing. And I'll start to my far left.
Well, yeah, I think it's already started happening, and I just hope it continues, because there's a lot of development going on in Frome, and I know we need houses, but it's that area to the south of Frome, which was that Selwood Forest, so it's almost like, for me, it's pushing against that, which is a really healthy thing to happen. We need houses, but they're not necessarily affordable houses, are they? So I just hope that we're lucky here to have it growing in such a good way all together. I mean, 4 or 5 pieces of land all joined up, that's making a huge corridor, so I'd really like to see that expand almost to the southern boundary of Frome, Selwood Garden Community isn't yet affirmed, and that could be, it's a dream, but that's what I'd love to see.
Thanks, Julian.
We did an event called Out of the Darkness, where people come and listen to the sounds of the night around a campfire. And one of the people that came started playing a nightingale in the farmhouse, main room of the farmhouse, and we said, "What are you doing?" in a nice way. And he said this was a recording of a nightingale on this farm in 1988. So I would like, in 10 years, for the nightingales to come back to this part of the country. That would be absolutely wonderful. And providing things continue as they are at the Hill Somerset site, that's a dream which I think could be realised.
Thank you, Jan. Charlie?
So in our series of films, Wood for the Trees, on YouTube, we cover lots of different types of land use around trees, so from agroforestry through to timber. And we've also followed how government funding has been increasing over the last, during the last election, since the previous election, through the whole kind of parliament, which I think was really positive. I would like to see the kind of land use framework, including all of these different vital for different reasons. Land uses kind of be given the support that they need,
and to see these networks of rewilding connecting everything up.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Charlie.
With our scrub officer, back to the scrub officer. Last year we had 70 singing males, delighting girls. We had 18 turtle doves. This year, I think it will be more like 90 singing males, maybe 100 singing males. That's from nothing. Speed of recovery is fast, and it can happen so quickly. Just to leave you with one thought, in the film, which is already so out of date, I can't believe it, this year we had 27 stork nests. They laid 93 eggs. They fledged 52 stork chicks. We had 150 kettling storks above Knepp in August. All but 20 of them are now in North Africa. They've migrated. This is the first year we've had a stork that was born on Knepp migrate. They only come sexually mature when they're 4 or 5 years old, fly back to Knepp, mate, build a nest, mate, produce 3 chicks that are all fledged and now flown back to Africa. It can happen.
Well, we've heard and seen some amazing stories, and there's clearly some amazing work going on. So thank you all. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you, and good night.
Sharing.